If you have spent years buying the same herb plants every spring, only to start over again the following year, you are not doing anything wrong. Most of the herbs sold at garden centers are annuals. They die at the end of the season and will not come back. I am Timothy, and this is Evergreen Garden. Subscribe before we get to herb number 4, because what I tell you about that one is going to change the way you plant herbs. There is a whole group of herbs called perennials, and these plants return on their own every year without you replanting them. Some die back to their roots in cold weather and push up again in spring. Others stay green through mild winters. What they all have in common is that you plant them once and they keep showing up year after year, doing the work for you. This video covers 12 of the most reliable ones for American home gardeners. Before the list, a few things worth knowing. A perennial herb is a plant that lives for more than 2 years. It does not need to be replanted from seed or transplant each season. Instead, the roots survive the winter, and the plant either dies back and regrows or keeps growing year-round, depending on your climate. Your USDA plant hardiness zone matters a great deal here. What survives winter in Georgia may not survive in Minnesota. Throughout this video, you will hear the zone ranges for each herb. These ranges tell you whether the roots are likely to make it through your winter without help. If you are in a zone outside the listed range, that does not necessarily mean you cannot grow the herb. It usually means you need to grow it in a container so you can bring it inside, or you need to give the roots extra protection when cold weather comes. One more thing worth understanding before the list. When gardeners say an herb comes back every year, they usually mean the roots survive underground and send up new growth once temperatures warm. The top of the plant may look completely dead in winter. That does not mean it is gone. Patience in spring is part of growing perennial herbs well. Number 1. Chives. USDA zones 3 to 9. Chives are among the most cold-hardy herbs on this list, which makes them a natural starting point for anyone building a perennial herb garden. They survive hard winters in most of the continental United States, and when spring arrives, they push up bright green again, often before anything else in the garden has even thought about waking up. What makes chives worth growing is their flexibility. You can use the leaves, fresh in salads, soups, potato dishes, scrambled eggs, and any place where you want a mild, gentle onion flavor without the sharpness of a raw onion. The purple flowers that appear in late spring are edible as well, and they look beautiful scattered across a salad or used as a garnish. Chives prefer full sun, but will manage in partial shade, though the flavor will not be as strong. They are not fussy about soil as long as it drains reasonably well. Water them consistently during the growing season, but do not let them sit in waterlogged ground. In a container, chives grow well in a pot at least 6 inches deep. They can be kept on a kitchen windowsill over winter if you live in a colder zone, though they will eventually want to go dormant. The easiest approach is to let them die back, keep them somewhere frost-free, and then move them back out in spring. The most common mistake with chives is not harvesting them often enough. Regular cutting actually encourages the plant to produce more leaves and stay bushy. Cut them back to about 2 inches from the soil. They will regrow quickly. One safety note: chives and all plants in the allium family are toxic to dogs and cats. If you have pets that spend time in the garden, grow chives in a raised bed or container they cannot reach. That reliability, that willingness to return and keep producing with very little from you, is exactly what makes chives the ideal herb to start with. Number 2. Thyme. USDA zones 4 to 9. Thyme is a low-growing herb that spreads slowly across the soil and produces tiny leaves with a concentrated flavor that most cooks prefer over the dried version. It is also one of the most undemanding plants in the garden. Once established, it asks for very little. Thyme is a Mediterranean herb, which means it prefers warm, sunny conditions and soil that drains well. It does not like sitting in wet soil, especially during winter. Good drainage is the most important thing you can give it. Plant it in a spot that does not hold water after heavy rain. Add some grit or sand to the soil if needed, and it will generally take care of itself from there. In the garden, thyme works as a border plant, a ground cover around taller herbs, or tucked into the edge of a raised bed. In a container, a wide pot rather than a deep one suits it better because the roots spread sideways rather than downward. Make sure the pot has drainage holes and use a gritty or sandy potting mix. Harvest time by cutting sprigs, not individual leaves. The best flavor comes just before the plant flowers in late spring or early summer. After flowering, cut the plant back by about 1/3 to keep it tidy and encourage fresh growth. In the kitchen, thyme is a natural partner for roasted chicken, root vegetables, soups, and any slow-cooked dish where you want a gentle, earthy flavor. It holds up well during long cooking, which makes it especially useful. The mistake most gardeners make is overwatering. Thyme that sits in consistently moist soil will develop root rot. Treat it more like a cactus than a basil plant, especially during the slower months. Thyme is the kind of herb that rewards you simply for choosing the right spot. Number 3. Oregano. USDA zones 4 to 9. Greek oregano in particular is a reliable perennial that returns every spring with stronger flavor than the year before. The roots deepen over time, and in the right conditions, an oregano plant can produce well for many years from the same spot in the garden. There are different types of oregano available, and this matters more than most people realize. Common oregano sold at large garden centers is often Italian oregano, which is milder and sometimes a short-lived perennial. Greek oregano, also sometimes labeled as true oregano or Oreganum vulgare sub sp hirtum, has a stronger flavor and is generally more reliably perennial. If you want an herb that really comes back with purpose, look for the Greek variety. Like thyme, oregano is a Mediterranean plant and prefers full sun and well-drained soil. It will grow in poor, lean soil and tends to produce more aromatic leaves when it is not over-fertilized. Too much nitrogen makes the plant leafy but dilutes the flavor. In a container, oregano grows well in a pot at least 8 inches wide. It can spread outward quite a bit over a season, so give it room. Trim it back after flowering to encourage fresh growth and prevent it from getting too woody. Harvest oregano by cutting stems just above a leaf node. The best time to harvest is right as the flower buds are forming, but before the flowers open. At that point, the oils in the leaves are at their peak. In the kitchen, oregano is essential for tomato sauces, pizza, lamb, and grilled vegetables. Fresh oregano is much stronger than dried, so use it with a light hand. The most common mistake is leaving it to flower and seed without cutting it back. A plant that is regularly trimmed will stay productive much longer. Number 4. Mint. USDA zones 3 to 8. Mint is one of the most reliable perennial herbs you can grow, and it is also one of the most important to handle carefully. The reason comes down to one word: spread. Left to its own devices in a garden bed, mint will spread aggressively through underground runners. It does not ask permission. It will push into neighboring plants, claim territory you did not offer, and be very difficult to remove once it is settled in. This is not a reason to avoid mint. It is a reason to grow mint in a container. Plant mint in its own dedicated pot, a container at least 12 inches wide and 10 inches deep. A terracotta or plastic pot works well. Keep it separate from your other herb pots rather than planting it in a shared container. If you want to plant mint in the ground, sink a container into the soil with the rim slightly above the surface to restrict the runners. This method works, but you will still need to check it regularly. Mint prefers partial to full sun and likes consistently moist soil. It is one of the few herbs on this list that does not mind having regular water. In a container, you may need to water it every day or two during summer heat. Spearmint and peppermint are the most common varieties for kitchen use. Both come back reliably year after year. Peppermint has a stronger, cooler flavor and is well suited for teas and desserts. Spearmint is slightly gentler and works well with lamb, peas, and summer drinks. The most common mistake is assuming mint needs no attention because it is so vigorous. A mint plant that is never trimmed or divided will eventually become leggy and produce smaller leaves with less flavor. Cut it back hard in midsummer and divide it every couple of years to keep it producing well. A safety note: mint in concentrated or essential oil form is toxic to cats and dogs. Fresh leaves in small quantities are generally less of a concern, but keep pets away from large amounts. Mint is one of those herbs that, once you have it growing well, you will never be without it. Number 5. Lemon balm. USDA zones 3 to 7. Lemon balm is a member of the mint family, which tells you something important before we go further. It spreads. Not quite as aggressively as mint, but enough that the container advice applies here as well. Plant it in its own pot, or give it a clearly defined space in the garden, and be prepared to trim it back regularly. What lemon balm offers in return is a plant that is extremely easy to grow, comes back reliably in most of the country, and produces large, soft, lemon-scented leaves that are pleasant in herb teas, lemonades, salads, and as a garnish for lighter dishes and desserts. The plant prefers partial to full sun and moist, well-drained soil. It is forgiving of a range of conditions and tends to do well in locations where other more demanding herbs might struggle. It grows quickly during the warm months and can reach 2 to 3 feet tall if left unchecked. In a container, lemon balm does well in a pot at least 10 inches wide. Harvest it often to keep the plant bushy and prevent it from going to seed too quickly. Once it flowers and sets seed, the flavor of the leaves tends to decline slightly. The kitchen uses for lemon balm are lighter than most herbs on this list. It is most commonly used fresh rather than cooked, since heat reduces the lemon aroma. Add it to cold drinks, stir it into yogurt, use it as a garnish, or steep it in hot water for a simple herbal tea. The most common mistake is letting it go to seed and self-sow throughout the garden. Once it self-seeds, you will have lemon balm appearing in unexpected places the following year. Cut the flowers off before they set seed if you want to control where the plant grows. One safety note: lemon balm may interact with thyroid medications and sedatives. If you are taking either of these, consult your doctor before using lemon balm regularly. An herb that smells wonderful, grows with very little encouragement, and keeps coming back on its own is exactly what a low-maintenance garden is built around. Number 6. Sage. USDA zones 5 to 8. Common culinary sage is a shrubby perennial that builds presence in the garden over time. In warmer zones, it stays semi-evergreen through winter, keeping its soft gray-green leaves right up until hard frost. In colder zones, it dies back to the base and returns in spring. Sage is a rewarding herb to grow once established. The flavor is strong and earthy, better fresh than dried, and a small amount goes a long way in cooking. A single plant, well maintained, can produce enough for a household for years. Plant sage in full sun with well-draining soil. It shares the same preference for dry feet as thyme and oregano. Wet winter soil is the primary reason sage does not come back in spring. If your garden holds water after rain, build up the planting area slightly, or mix in coarse sand or grit before planting. In containers, sage grows well in a wide, shallow pot. A terracotta pot is helpful because it breathes and reduces the risk of the soil staying too wet. Water it when the top inch of soil is dry. During winter, move the container to a sheltered spot if you are in a colder zone. Harvest sage by cutting individual stems. Do not strip the plant bare. Leave at least half the foliage so the plant can continue photosynthesizing. The best time to harvest is late spring through early summer. In the kitchen, sage is classic with butter and pasta, with roasted squash, with pork, and tucked inside stuffing. It is one of the few herbs that holds up well when pan-fried in butter until slightly crispy. The most common mistake is letting sage get too woody without cutting it back. An annual trim in early spring, cutting the older woody stems back by about a third, keeps the plant producing well and prevents it from becoming a scraggly, bare-stemmed shrub. Sage rewards patience and a little seasonal care with years of reliable harvests. We are halfway through the list, and before we continue, there is something worth talking about that applies to several of the herbs still to come. The question is not just which herb to plant. The question is where you plant it. The herbs that fail most often in perennial gardens do not fail because of the wrong variety or the wrong care routine. They fail because of where they went into the ground. Poor drainage is the #1 killer of Mediterranean herbs like rosemary, lavender, sage, and thyme during winter. These plants evolved in rocky, dry conditions. Their roots are not built to sit in wet, cold soil for weeks at a time. If you have heavy clay soil or a spot that holds water after rain, there are a few good options. Raise the planting area by building a small mound of improved soil 6 to 8 inches higher than the surrounding ground. Mix coarse sand or horticultural grit into the soil before planting, or move the herb to a container with good drainage holes and a gritty potting mix. Containers also allow you to bring herbs inside over winter if you are at the edge of their hardiness range. Mulching around the base of outdoor plants in fall can also help insulate the roots through cold spells. The placement decision you make at planting time is the most important decision you will make for these herbs. Keep that in mind as we look at the next 4 on the list. Number 7. Rosemary. USDA zones 7 to 10 in the ground. Container growers in zones 4 to 11 with indoor winter protection. Rosemary is worth covering at length because it is a plant that many gardeners struggle with, not because it is difficult, but because it is often planted incorrectly. Rosemary is a Mediterranean shrub that can live for 15 to 20 years in the right conditions. In zones 7 and warmer, it will grow year-round outdoors without protection, getting larger and more productive every season. In colder zones, the plant will not survive an outdoor winter without help. The solution is a container. Grow rosemary in a large pot. Enjoy it outdoors during the warm months and move it to a cool, bright spot indoors before the first hard frost. It does not need a warm room, just a place with good light and temperatures above freezing. Rosemary requires full sun and excellent drainage. It will not tolerate waterlogged soil. The most common reason rosemary dies is root rot, from overwatering or from planting it in soil that holds moisture too long. A gritty potting mix, a pot with drainage holes, and watering only when the soil is genuinely dry will solve most rosemary problems before they start. Harvest rosemary by snipping the tips of stems. Younger, softer growth has more flavor than the older, woody stems. Avoid cutting into the thick, brown, woody base of the plant, as this area often does not regrow well. In the kitchen, rosemary is irreplaceable with lamb, potatoes, roasted vegetables, and breads. It is one of the few herbs where even a single small sprig makes a significant difference in flavor. The most common mistake is overwatering. Water rosemary less than you think it needs, especially in winter. If the plant is indoors, water it only once every 2 to 3 weeks during the cold months. A well-grown rosemary plant, once established in the right conditions, is a productive, long-lived herb that earns its place in any garden. Number 8. Lavender. USDA zones 5 to 8 for most English lavender varieties, with some variation by type. French lavender is less cold-hardy, generally suited to zones 8 and above. If you are in a colder zone, English lavender is the one to choose. Lavender gets a reputation for being difficult, and like rosemary, the problem is almost always drainage. Lavender needs dry, well-drained, slightly alkaline soil and full sun. In those conditions, it is actually quite resilient. In heavy, moist soil, it declines quickly, especially during winter. Plant lavender in the sunniest spot you have. Add lime to slightly acidic soil if needed, or plant lavender in a raised bed where you can control the soil composition more easily. In containers, use a gritty or sandy potting mix and a pot with excellent drainage. Avoid glazed or non-porous containers that hold moisture. Once established, lavender is a plant that does better with less attention than with more. Water it sparingly. Do not fertilize heavily. The leaner the soil and the less water it receives, the more aromatic the flowers tend to be. After flowering, cut the plant back by about 1/3 to prevent it from becoming woody. Do not cut into the old wood at the base. Lavender that is cut back to bare wood often does not recover. Consistent, moderate pruning after each flowering is better than one drastic cut. In the kitchen, lavender flowers can be used sparingly in shortbread, honey, lemonade, and some savory meat dishes. The flavor is strong, so use less than you think you need. The most common mistake is planting lavender in a spot that looks dry in summer but collects water during winter rain. Check your planting spot during a rainy period before you commit. One safety note: lavender is mildly toxic to cats and dogs if consumed in significant quantities. Keep it away from pets that tend to chew on plants. Lavender rewards careful placement far more than it rewards extra watering or rich soil. Number 9. French tarragon. USDA zones 4 to 8. French tarragon is the culinary tarragon, and it is important to be specific about that because there is another variety called Russian tarragon that looks similar, spreads more easily, and has almost no kitchen flavor worth using. If you buy seeds labeled simply as tarragon, you are very likely getting Russian tarragon. French tarragon must be purchased as a plant or a rooted cutting, not from seed, because it does not set viable seed. The difference in flavor between the two is significant. French tarragon has a distinct, subtle anise character that is central to classic French cooking. It is the herb in sauce béarnaise, in herb butter, and in the traditional fine herb blend. Once you grow it, it becomes one of those herbs you will not want to be without. French tarragon needs full sun, good drainage, and moderate watering. It does not like extremely hot, humid summers, and may die back or decline in midsummer heat. A light layer of mulch over the roots helps moderate soil temperature during the warm months. In colder zones, tarragon dies back to the ground in late fall and returns from the roots in spring. Divide the roots every 3 to 4 years to keep the plant vigorous. Over time, the roots can become crowded and flavor production drops. Harvest tarragon by snipping stems above a leaf node during the growing season. Use it fresh for the best results, as drying reduces the anise character significantly. The most common mistake is buying Russian tarragon by accident. Before purchasing, crush a leaf and smell it. French tarragon has a clear, pleasant anise scent. Russian tarragon smells grassy and mild, with very little aromatic quality. Tarragon takes a little more care to source correctly, but once you have the right plant in the ground, it becomes one of the most distinctive flavors in your perennial herb garden. Number 10. Sorrel. USDA zones 3 to 9. Garden sorrel is a leafy perennial herb that appears very early in spring, sometimes while there is still frost in the mornings. It is one of the first fresh things you can harvest from the garden each year, and for that alone, it earns a place in the perennial bed. Sorrel has a sharp, lemony, slightly acidic flavor that comes from oxalic acid in the leaves. It is not sweet or mild. The flavor is distinctive and takes a little getting used to, but once you learn to cook with it, sorrel becomes one of those herbs you start to miss when it is not around. Young, tender leaves are milder and more pleasant raw in salads. As the leaves age and the plant matures through summer, the flavor becomes more intense and better suited for cooking. Sorrel soup, sorrel sauce with fish, and sorrel wilted briefly with butter are classic preparations that show off the herb at its best. Plant sorrel in partial to full sun. It tolerates more shade than most herbs on this list, which makes it useful in gardens where you have spots that get 4 to 5 hours of sun rather than 6 or more. Keep the soil consistently moist and reasonably fertile. Cut the flower stalks off as they appear to keep the plant producing leaves rather than going to seed. Sorrel left to flower will reduce leaf production and decline faster than a plant that is kept trimmed. Divide established sorrel clumps every 3 years or so to refresh the plant and maintain good leaf production. The most common mistake is letting it bolt in summer heat without cutting it back. Regular harvesting and removing flower stems keeps sorrel producing through the season. A herb that appears before almost anything else in the garden and keeps producing with very little input is worth making space for. Before we get to the last 2 herbs on the list, it is worth stopping to answer a question that comes up often. Which of these herbs should go in pots, and which ones are fine in the ground? The answer depends partly on your zone and partly on the herb itself. Mint and lemon balm should always be in their own pots, regardless of zone. Both spread aggressively through underground runners and will take over neighboring plants in a shared bed. A pot keeps them productive, manageable, and easy to move around as the season changes. Rosemary should be in a pot if you are in zones 4 through 6. It will not reliably survive outdoors in those zones and needs to come inside during winter. In zones 7 and above, it can go in the ground. Lavender is worth potting in zone 5 and lower if you have heavy or wet soil. In well-drained soil or raised beds with careful drainage, it can go in the ground. All of the other herbs on this list are generally fine in the ground within their hardiness zones. One thing worth adding here, herbs growing near the kitchen door are more likely to be used regularly, and regular use tends to make them more productive over time. If you have a container spot close to where you cook, filling it with thyme, chives, and sage is a combination that almost never disappoints. Number 11. Lovage. USDA zones 3 to 8. Lovage is an herb that does not get as much attention as it deserves, probably because it grows so large. A mature lovage plant can reach 5 to 7 feet tall, and it spreads to 3 or 4 feet wide. For many home gardens, that is simply more plant than expected. But given the right spot along a fence, at the back of a raised bed, or in a corner of the garden where height is welcome, lovage becomes one of the most productive and flavorful herbs you can grow. Every part of lovage is useful. The leaves have a strong celery and parsley flavor, much bolder than either of those plants on their own. Use them fresh in soups and stews, where they add depth without the need for much additional seasoning. The stems can be used as natural drinking straws for savory drinks, or chopped finely like celery. The seeds have an intense flavor and can be used in breads, pickling, and spice blends. Lovage prefers full sun to partial shade and moist, fertile soil. It dies back completely to the ground in late fall and returns reliably in spring. Established plants send up new growth with good energy once temperatures warm. One practical safety note: lovage may increase photosensitivity in some people, making skin more sensitive to sun after handling or consuming the plant. Handle with care if you have sensitive skin, and avoid consuming it in large amounts during pregnancy. The most common mistake is underestimating the size of the plant and crowding it with other herbs. Give it its own dedicated corner with room to grow to its full size. Lovage is the kind of herb that rewards gardeners who give it space to do what it naturally wants to do. Number 12. Winter savory. USDA zones 5 to 9. Winter savory is the less commonly known sibling of summer savory, and in many ways, it is the better choice for a perennial herb garden. Summer savory is an annual. Winter savory is a perennial, and it earns its place on this list through the same quiet reliability that makes the best perennial herbs worth growing. Winter savory is a small, semi-evergreen shrub with narrow leaves and a flavor that sits somewhere between thyme and oregano, slightly peppery with a warm herb character. It stays green in mild winters and dies back in colder zones before returning in spring. Plant winter savory in full sun with well-drained soil. Like thyme and sage, it does not like wet roots and prefers to stay a little dry between waterings. In a container, it does well in a gritty potting mix in a medium-sized pot. It does not need much fertilizer, and too much nitrogen will reduce the flavor of the leaves. Harvest winter savory by snipping stems regularly. The more you cut it, the busier and more compact the plant stays. If left to grow without trimming, it can get leggy and produce smaller, less flavorful leaves. In the kitchen, winter savory has traditional ties to beans, a pairing that goes back centuries in European cooking. Add it to bean soups, lentil dishes, and roasted meats. It holds up to heat better than some more delicate herbs. The most common mistake is overlooking it at the garden center in favor of more familiar herbs. Winter savory is easier to maintain than rosemary and delivers a useful, active kitchen herb for most of the year. This is the kind of herb that, once you grow it for a season, you begin to wonder why you did not plant it sooner. So there are your 12. Chives, thyme, oregano, mint, lemon balm, sage, rosemary, lavender, French tarragon, sorrel, lovage, and winter savory. The promise at the start of this video was a list of herbs you can plant once and not have to replant every spring. That promise holds for all 12 of these, with the understanding that the right zone, the right drainage, and in a few cases the right container are part of the deal. If you are new to perennial herbs, do not try to start all 12 at once. Pick 3 that fit your zone and your kitchen. Get them established well in the first season. Let them come back the following spring without any help from you. That experience of watching something you planted return on its own is deeply satisfying, and it will make you want to build a garden around it. The question for the comments: which perennial herb comes back every year in your garden, and what zone are you growing in? Drop your answer below. We love hearing what is working in gardens across the country. If this video helped you choose herbs that will last in your garden for years, share it with someone who is tired of buying the same plants every spring. And subscribe to Evergreen Garden for more practical garden wisdom every week. We will see you in the next one.